So, what happens when a Super Bowl party, a 49ers defensive end, and a Grammy winning rapper all collide in one nightclub? Well, you get a story that is way, way more complicated than it first looked. Today, we're breaking down the shooting of Keion White. This is the big question, isn't it? A night that's all about celebration somehow ends in gunfire with two huge stars right at the center of the chaos. So, how on earth do we get here? Let's try to piece together what we actually know.
All right, to really get a grip on this whole mystery, we have to start with the basic facts. So let's rewind the clock and go back to that night in San Francisco.
Okay, so picture this. It's 4 in the morning in San Francisco, right after the Super Bowl. The entire city is electric, and the Dalian nightclub is absolutely packed. This is exactly where our story takes a very dark turn. Those first few hours were just a complete blur. You have a shooting, and then boom, 49ers player Keion White is rushed into emergency surgery. But then, not even 24 hours later, the whole story of what actually happened that night starts to get really, really messy. So at the very center of all of this is Keion White. Let's take a minute to talk about the 49ers player who found himself smack in the middle of this whole chaotic scene. Now, this is not just some random guy. We're talking about a powerhouse on the 49ers defensive line. Keion White is a player who absolutely makes his presence known every time he steps on the field. And you can see here, he's not a bench warmer. He was drafted 46th overall. That's a second-round pick. He's a key rotational player for the 49ers, a serious investment for the team. And that just makes his involvement in something like this even more high stakes. But Keion White wasn't the only star at the club that night. Not by a long shot. Now we've got to turn to the other major figure in this story, the Grammy-winning rapper Lil Baby. We're talking about Dominique Jones, but you probably know him as Lil Baby. And he isn't just a rapper, he's a global phenomenon. Coming out of Atlanta, he's become one of the biggest names in all of music, period. And honestly, the numbers just speak for themselves. Multiple #1 albums, a Grammy, and a Diamond certified single. Do you know what that means? That's over 10 million units sold. Lil Baby is at the absolute top of his game. So you've got an NFL star and a rap superstar in the same room. What could possibly go wrong? Well, this is where the official story and what we heard at first really start to clash. So what really happened? And right here, this is the heart of the whole mystery. The first story we all heard was that White was just an innocent bystander, wrong place, wrong time. But then the police report drops, and it paints a completely different picture, placing him right at the center of an argument with Lil Baby moments before the shots were fired. And this quote from the police report, it just gives you a glimpse into the pure chaos of the scene. We're not talking about a simple disagreement here. This was a wild party, which, you have to imagine, makes it incredibly difficult for investigators to figure out what actually happened. So let's look at the hard evidence. We know a witness confirmed the argument was serious enough that they went to go get management. Then, pop, pop, 2 gunshots. The witness comes back, and White is on the floor, shot in the ankle. But here's the real kicker. Police found 2 different shell casings, a 9mm and a .45 caliber. What does that tell us? So, with no arrests and these totally conflicting stories, it's really no surprise that we're left with way more questions than answers. Let's dig into the biggest ones still hanging out there. First and foremost, the most obvious one. Who pulled the trigger? I mean, despite this whole reported argument with Lil Baby, the police haven't named a single suspect. The shooter's identity is still a total mystery. And yeah, what about those 2 different shell casings? Does that mean there were 2 guns? Maybe even 2 shooters? This one little piece of evidence just throws all the simple explanations right out the window. But you know, maybe the most baffling detail of all is that Keion White, the victim, has reportedly been uncooperative with the police. Why would you protect the person who shot you? It's a question that just opens up a whole new can of worms. And that brings us to the final question. How does a shooting happen in a crowded nightclub with celebrities everywhere and nobody gets arrested? This wasn't a crime committed in the shadows. It happened in public. And yet, it's just shrouded in this weird silence. It really leaves you wondering, in a world of celebrity and influence, does the truth ever really come out?